Sandy and I first went to Oringa in 2001 with Reverend Don Folks, the founder of the
Great family.
While there, we met with people and were continually impressed by their attitudes and their willingness to work. But the problem we kept seeing was there's so little for people to work with. During that first trip, we donated a flour mill to a group of women, sawmill to the diocese. The people were so excited to have something to work with that before we left, we were able to see lumber being cut and shipped, and the foundation started for a building to house the flour mill. Well, over the next few years, we are able to see our partners in Oringa work with these two items, earning badly needed funds. Sandy and I helped with a variety of programs in Oringa. A friend of ours, Mark Jensen, led the agricultural program, the Ag Institute, that taught improved farming methods. He noted that only a few in Oringa could afford to practice what they were being taught, and they had trouble buying the supplies they needed. This led us to thinking about the need to address these problems as well in the agricultural section. In 2005, we spent 6 months working at the University in Oringa. While we were there, we spent time in the villages with various projects at the diocese. People kept telling us over and over their biggest problem was that they had no money and no way to earn anymore. As we were leaving, Bishop M. DeGala and the diocese staff had dinner with us and told me malnourishment, poor education, health problems, bad water, early childhood death, all of our problems are caused by our poverty. M. DeGala went on to tell me that the most important thing that could be done for the Christian community was to raise their incomes. And this was the start of Oringa Hope. Back in the US, Sandy and I worked and outlined a program and joined with Reverend Paul Harris. From the start, we set out to have a program that was sustainable. That is, it pays all its own expenses, so it will be there for the children and grandchildren of the people. Self-governing, that is, it's run completely by the Tanzanians, and 100% locally owned and operated. Well, the Oringa program meets these goals, and it is at the same time complex and simple. It is complex in that there's 3 groups that work together to provide education and training. That's done by the Microfinance Institute. Financing for working, that's done by a network of cooperative savings and loans called Sacos, and access to buying fairly priced seed and fertilizer and sell at fair market prices. That's through a network of farmers unions called AMCOs. But it's also simple in that the members of Oringa Hope are learning how to better manage and plan their small farms, improve their farming techniques, and are able to buy fairly priced seeds and fertilizer in their village and get fair prices for their crops. Well, what a difference this makes. Our typical member will earn $320 a year to support a family of 6 when they start. Within 3 years of starting, they're earning $900, $1,000, $1,100 a year, 3 to 4 times the income they started with. What a difference. They will now send all of their children to school themselves. They will eat better. They will eliminate malnourishment in their family. They will be healthier. They'll get medical attention. Their housing will improve. They'll live longer. Their parish will benefit. The church's donations will rise. The whole community improves. The Oringa Hope program has been working for 10 years now. We've enrolled over 20,000 people in the diocese, but there are thousands still waiting to join. Bishop Kavila, when I was there earlier this year, told me that his goal was to see Oringa Hope membership double within the next 5 years and reach all the dioceses within 10 years. Well, it costs $500 to bring a family of 6 into this program. 99% of these funds are sent directly to Oringa, where they help the families of Oringa Hope. All of the work here is done by volunteers, and all of the expenses are paid by us. All of the work in Oringa is paid for by the members of Oringa Hope, who pay dues and fees and interest on loans. And that means that your funds provide the credit the families need to run their families. And these numbers then are used and reused and reused, making this a perpetual situation. Well, can you or your church start a family on the journey out of poverty? If you'd like to know more, you can contact us at the email on your screen or at the address on our literature. I thank you for your time for listening. May God bless you.
Well, that is a quick introduction. I close the screen and I am going to open a PowerPoint to talk about a little bit. Oops, sorry, I did that too soon. I've got a screen share before I can open the PowerPoint all the way up. It's right here. All right, can you see that? Is that on your screen? Somebody tell me, can you see that okay? Everybody's
It's there now.
Okay, good. This, by the way, is a headquarters building that I built, about 10 years ago now. It gives a space for all the people that work in Aringaho. But somebody was asking about Tanzania, just to make it clear. Here's Africa, here's the equator, here's Tanzania, right on the equator. And if you blow up the country, up here in the north, you have the Serengeti, which we all like to think about. Kilimanjaro's right in here, Lake Victoria. Just offshore and part of Tanzania is Zanzibar. Right here in about the middle of the country is Iringa. Now in Tanzania, you have a major road that runs along here, and there you'll find a fair amount of money, fair amount meaning families there will make maybe 3,000 a year, maybe 4,000 a year. And that's driven by tea farms, coffee farms, and tourists. Along the coast, you'll find another major highway and a similar situation. Most of the aid agencies you hear about work along here and along there. And that's because it's easy to get to. People live fairly close together. There's good communication, cell phones, and so forth. Iringa, however, is right here in the middle of the country. There is one tortuous road going up here, and I mean it's torturous, it's a full day drive. So most groups will fly into Dar es Salaam. You used to have to drive up there. Now you can actually fly from Dar es Salaam up there. But it's a full day's drive to go up to Iringa. And when you get to Iringa, you'll find that it's fairly sparsely populated. The villages are spread out, poor roads, cell connection, it's off and on to most of the villages. Internet kind of sort of works off and on. So this area is much more difficult to work in, and you find far fewer people. It's also much poorer. Average income, $342 a year, according to World Bank, and that's for a family of 6. Of course, they generally, what they'll eat is they'll have 4 acres they're farming. 1 acre will be basically a big garden to raise corn. They eat 1 big meal of corn mush a day, and that's about it. The rest, the other 3 acres are their cash crops. That's what they'll make their $300 on. The average income for the country, however, is around $1,200. And that's because you have more money up these tourist regions and around the coast. You can get 2 and 3 crops here. Iringa gets 1. So you have much more money in these areas, and that's why the country's average income is higher. Typical education, 5th or 6th grade, but what you'll find is most people are functionally illiterate. They graduated and they haven't read anything since they graduated. So it's questionable. Some villages, you'll go through the whole village and won't find anyone who can read or write adequately. Just to give you an idea, when you think about poverty, well, here are some areas we talk about. We all think of Bangladesh as so poor. Well, they live on something around $1 a day a person. People in Iringa, 39 cents. a day a person. Iringa is tied in a 4-way tie for the poorest in the world. So it's pretty poor. I mentioned in the slide that there are 3 pieces to Iringa Hope, 3 big pieces. The whole goal is to help people raise their incomes. Most people have title to farm. They don't own it, but to farm 4 acres, as I said. They'll have 1 acre to eat, and they'll have 3 acres for the cash. Their crops are very poor. They're not traditional farmers. No one's ever told them how to farm. Even if they knew how to farm, there's no place to buy seed or fertilizer. The way you get fertilizer is you take a bus to town, buy 1 bag, take a bus back with a bag on your lap, and do it again the next day. And over the course of a couple of weeks, you might get enough fertilizer. You can't get fertilizer. They can't get hybrid seed. So basically they farm by taking what's left of last year's crop and throwing it in the ground. And that gives a pretty poor crop. So what we do is 3 things. We started first the Microfinance Institute. It is an international nonprofit called an NGO. It's based in Tanzania. It's owned by the Tanzanians, run by the Tanzanians. I'm the chairman of the board, but I'm the only non-Tanzanian in the whole operation. The Microfinance Institute has people that, professionals, Tanzanians, that do training, education, help people organize, and so forth. They're a resource group. Then locally in the village, we have a group of what are called Sacos, Savings and Credit Cooperative Societies. These are savings and loans. They're cooperative savings and loans. They are owned by the people, only by the people who live in the village. No one else owns anything. These places you must make, we teach people they must save, and they save. And once they've saved, they can get a loan. So now they can get some money to farm with. They have a place to save and a place to farm. Some people say, why don't they just save? Well, if you've been there, there's no doors, there's no locks. Where do you save? And if they have money, the tradition, which isn't much, the tradition is if your neighbor's sick, you buy him medicine. So you can't, as a practical matter, there's no way to save money or to hide money or keep it safe. So when we started Sacos, you put savings in and it takes you a month to get money out. You have to give us a month's notice or you can't get your money. That's very important because now when your uncle comes and he wants $5, you can't get it. Takes you, you may have it, but it's going to take you a month to get it, so you save it. And we put safes in the villages and we take this money into town, so it is kept safe. But I'll talk a little more about it. You can get, so this is the heart and blood. This is the economic engine, is getting money there in a Sacos. But you have to be a member to borrow from this, and you have to save money to borrow from this. And you have to plan on how you're going to use it. We have 36 of these. Each of these are independent, each of them are registered, and each of them belongs to a central organization. Then we have a network of farmers co-ops. Once a Sacos is working well and people are buying and having better crops, the demand starts to build, so we can start to supply them with better seed, fertilizer, and help them sell their crops. It's a farmers co-op just like we have here. They're smaller. Again, you join it and then you buy through it and sell through it. These are owned locally by the villages. And right now we have 26 of these, and they too belong to a central organization. If you look overall, we have 62 different co-ops working in Tanzania, all of which belong to a central organization. And so that is, so when I say it's complex, well, that's why it's complex. If you add all the people involved in this, it's close to 25,000 people in Tanzania that are involved with Iringa Hope. This is a group of professionals we have working out of our central building. And well, like Professor Ugolumo, he has his PhD in business management and about 30 years in various development projects. The main office is run by Itweni Luago. Itweni has her MBA and has her bachelor's in economics and has certificates in co-op management, very sharp lady. Jeff Aduma has his master's in business, a retired banker, and so forth. All of these people are very highly qualified. They're all from the Iringa area. When they go to a village, everyone relates to them. They're just part of the community. They all, I have yet to be in a village, and I've been in 80 villages now in the Iringa area. I've been yet to be in a village where a Twainey did not have a relative. One thing about the people is they have extended families and they keep track of each other very much. So they're always keeping track of who's where. And so the interconnection is very important in building trust. It's hard to get people to change, especially when they don't read, they don't write, things haven't changed in their lifetime. It's hard to get them to change and trust. But this group, then they have expertise in legal issues, banking issues, financial issues, planning issues. We have an agronomist, Venance has his master's in agronomy. We run a small soil testing lab so we can give advice, help them buy, help them manage their funds. We are the largest adult education and training program in the region. We do a lot of work training and educating our members. We have 2 big meetings in our offices for all the leaders, and there's 184 leaders that come in for 2 one-week training sessions a year, where we train them in all sorts of things. And then we go out to the villages and have meetings with the memberships in the villages, again, doing more training and education on what you should do, how much fertilizer you should use. We also talk about planning your business, managing your money, managing your personal finances, and so forth. So there's a terrific amount of education and training involved, and it's really necessary because people have never had to do these things and have had no training up till now. Here's our agronomist. And like I said, we talk about planning and running your farms. We, in addition to having these co-ops, and I'll show you a map where they are, we also have been putting up buildings in the villages. We call these villages Integrated Development Centers, or IDCs. What the buildings are is it has an office and a meeting room. This is the meeting room for the Sacos. So to make loans, you have a secure place to keep the money in the village. And then you have a place to meet and have your committees meetings, do your credit exams and so forth. And by the way, to borrow money, you have to save, if you want to borrow $3, you have to save $1, and you have to get 2 other people to promise to pay back money if you don't. And we are very aggressive about collecting money. And when I say we, really, I don't do it. It's the people they elected in the village. Everything's public. We tell people what everyone knows, what everyone borrowed and what everyone owes. And if you don't pay, well, then they go to the next person to pay. So we have that. And then in another part of the building, there's an office for the co-op manager, and there's a small warehouse. So those things together, we call an integrated development center because you can borrow money, you can get a class, you can sell your crop, you can get your fertilizer all in one building. Here's, by the way, the IDC at Colombo. By the way, I built 23 of these. We have 23 of these scattered around at the moment. You must have, a village has to have both a working Sacos and AMCOs before we build one. And there's 23 of them now. Here's the one we built recently at Cololo. I had a celebration when we built it. It's about 1,200 square feet. Costs about $20,000 to put one up. And like I said, there's office, meeting rooms, and so forth there. Our board usually puts in about 20% of the money, and then Peter J. King Family Foundation will usually gives us a grant for the other 80%. And so that's how we pay for these buildings. When we were last at Kololo, and here we're meeting inside the church at Kololo, our big meetings are sometimes held in the church. Here's a meeting in the office. These are the 3 officers of the Sacos. Every Sacos has a chairman, a treasurer, and a secretary. And by the way, one of our rules is one of your officers must be a woman. They kind of laugh because when they ask me, can they all be women? I say yes, but they can't all be men. That's right. But it is a very traditional male-dominated society, and yet most of the members are women. So we require they must have at least one officer who is a woman. Here are the 3 officers at Kololo, 2 women and a man. We're meeting with them and taking data, talking about it. 334 people, 54 families. In those families, 21 of the farms are run by the men, so they are the members. And 33 of those farms are run by the women, so they are the members. This is how much capital they have. In these villages, they have their own capital, which is donated. King of Kings has donated most of this money, is donated to them. And we have a pool. People donate to us, including people from King of Kings, that are for everyone to use, a shared pool. And we have a pool, and every one of these places applies to borrow from the pool. So last year at Kololo, they had this much of their own money. They borrowed $6,400 and they made 40 loans. So not everyone got a loan who applied for last year. This is common. We tell places that we would like them to be able to make loans to 80 or 90% of the members. You see, they didn't quite make 80%. Because we think that there's no reason in admitting people that you can't help. So we tell them to limit their membership until they can access more money. They made 40 loans, borrowed an average of $250. And off this loan, they earned an average of $382 in profit. So you take their 300 they started with, the members wound up going from $300 to $682 on average last year from their loans. By the way, they sent 68 children to school for their profits. That's one of the first things they do. And one of the good things with the Ring of Hope is once we start lending and they start earning, they send their own kids. Last year, our program sent over 4,000 children to school. They also send them to trade schools and colleges. So, and you know, they do it year after year after year. To me, that's the best way to send a child or do something, is to help the people do it themselves. There is an AMCOS. The AMCOS is new. It only has 19 members. Pretty soon, all of these 54 will join the AMCOS, but this is pretty common. To join one of these, they have to pay. I think it's $10 in Kololo. I can't remember. Every single location decides themselves what they're going to charge for memberships or fees or dues. We don't tell them, they decide. So I can't tell you exactly. I believe it's $10 to join. There were 19 members last year. One of the problems at Kololo is getting strong leaders. At Kololo, it's very hard to get people who can read and write, and that's a requirement. We had to change leaders there 3 times before we were able to get a set of leaders for the Sacos. The first 2 said, oh yeah, they could read and write, and we found out they could not read or write or do arithmetic, so we changed them. And we finally gave them a test because everyone was saying they could and nobody could. We do not allow pastors to be an officer. We do not allow evangelists to be an officer. If you're an officer, you're going to have to collect a loan and you're going to have to do some hard negotiating, and we think that's not compatible with the work of a pastor and evangelist. And I know the bishop agrees with that. I think most pastors would not like to do that either. So it's not allowed. Anyone else can, as long as they can read and write, but they must read and write. And at Kololo, that has been a difficulty, finding people who can read and write. But if you look at what I do, we've done 4 studies now. Pastor Mahunga goes out and checks with people. He's done taken data from over 500 people. And so we have averages of what happens. So if we got $500, by the way, if I get $500, probably 495 of that will wind up in the village. There's almost no cost. The only thing that comes out of it is a little bit to exchange currency, because everything's done here is done by volunteers, and there the members pay for the work. So $500 loan, well, almost $5,000 in income is what that will generate over 5 years. 7 years of secondary school will be paid for. They will upgrade their house or maybe build a new one. Very important, because if you can go from a house with a dirt floor and a thatched roof to a house with a concrete floor and a metal roof, your life expectancy goes up 14 years. It's just incredible. You're healthier and you live much longer with that change. This is just an enormous impact. It's hard for us to appreciate the difference. But if you don't believe it, look it up under the UNESCO studies and you'll see that's what happens. It's just amazing. Family will eat better. There's about a third of the children in these areas are malnourished. They look healthy. They're not starving. They're well fed. They get lots of corn mush. They're malnourished because they don't get any protein. And so if they get a little more money, they will eat some protein and malnourishment goes away. Among our membership, all the surveys said there's no malnourishment. The end of 5 years, well, the end of 5 years, instead of $500, we will now have $600 to lend, because the interest that people pay will pay for all the expenses and a little profit. So the 500 will grow to 600 to lend. It'll have paid for a little over $200 in classes that we give them. That may not go very far in the US, but in Aringa, that's weeks and weeks of training. Family will have $190 in savings where they never had anything before. And so that's what it does. And the difference, like I said, is their crops, basically. Now, we do have businessmen, and I have lots of stories of people who started business very successfully, but 85% are small farmers. So that's what we focus on, but we do give training loans to businessmen. They're mainly small shops in the villages. Some have started furniture businesses, some have started lumbering businesses, but they're mainly small farmers. So that's really what we're focusing on. These, by the way, are typical members. This is just, this is a chairwoman at one place. We do, part of the training we do is training them how to take better care of their crops. They don't generally clean, dry, or weigh their crops properly. In Tanzania, it's very common for a farmer to lose 15 to 20% of his crop by storing it. And that's because of two reasons. One is they don't dry it well enough. You have to get it down to 13.5% moisture, and they don't know what they have. They just dry it, and they don't dry it enough, it molds. And the other problem is rats, insects. It's very hard to store. If you use a silo, the insects will eat it. If you use a little container, the rats will eat it, and it's a problem. So we train them on how to do that. We put out in Kololo and other places certified scales, humidity meters, teach them how to clean it properly and put it in a special bag. It's a airtight bag. It's called a PICS bag. And a PICS bag has less than 1% loss if you get the moisture down and store it. So we take them from 15 to 20% to 1 or 2% or less loss, which again ups your income. We do have a new program that's available. Kalolo didn't participate last year. This part of this is just training. By the way, the pandemic was terrible with training. We just weren't able to do that much because you couldn't have classes. So you had to go out and try to meet people. And if you have a small staff trying to service 20,000 people, training really suffers. So we do have a program we started called the Deferred Sales and Storage, DSS. Really, it's a multi-year effort to get people to get a better price. Normally what has happened in the past is as soon as they harvest, they have to sell. They have to sell because they owe money. School fees are coming, their bill for groceries coming, taxes are coming. They got to sell. They need the money. And who do they sell to? Well, a guy in a pickup truck who drives around. And the guy in the pickup truck takes a 20% cut. So they're getting a low price at the time of the year when the prices are the worst. You really want to save your crop for 6 months when the prices go up and sell it at the market. So we're training people on marketing and financing, and we're helping them finance by giving them loans against their crop. So if we take the crop in and store it for them, then we'll lend them money against that crop. We have to put up local facilities, and we've constructed a market center, and we're starting to sell crops on a large scale. If you sell crops on a large scale, you'll get another 15, 20% for the crop. So here's cleaning the crop. Doesn't look like much, but you have to, it seems strange, you have to train them, but you have to train them to clean it. If it's not clean, the price is low. So they clean it. We take it in. We have put up these certified scales so we can certify, which is important if you're going to seal it, that it's certified for weight. We check the humidity, certify the humidity, and stack it in the warehouse until the prices go up. And the warehouse, we have those local ones, and right now we're building this one. This is a $700,000 project. Again, our board put in 10% of it, and 90% of it is coming from the Kings. The market center, it's got a big storage area back here. It'll hold 15,000 bags, which is just a fraction, by the way, of the number of bags we hope to eventually have stored. A bag, that's, by the way, they don't talk in bushels, they talk in bags. I keep saying bags. There's 4 bushels in a bag. So if you like, we think in terms of bushels, 60,000 bushels in the warehouse is what there would be. So a bag is 4 bushels. We own 9 acres plot in town we acquired, and we're putting up this warehouse. It'll hold 15,000 bags. And then up front, we have training rooms and meeting rooms for the AMCOs, buyers, and so forth, so we can store and sell and market these on a big scale. We did a pilot program at Ilambaloli, and we were able to increase our members' income 35% by storing for 6 months and selling in a large lot. We got 35% more money in the members' pockets. And that's really, that's the only goal. I mean, our goal is only to help people make more money. That's it. It's very simple. Here's just some of the work. It's a big project. 18,000 cement blocks. We make our own blocks. This is Tanzania. We even make our own gravel. You take rocks and break your rocks up because there's no source of gravel. This is Tanzania. Iringa Hope here just gives you an idea how we're spread all over. But if you haven't been there, from here to here is about 200 miles. From here to here is about 200 miles. To go from Iringa down here, let's say over here to Isimani, that's about 50 miles. That takes me about 3 hours. And when I drive it at 3, and when I'm driving at 3 hours, all the people with me keeps telling me, slow down, because the roads are pretty bad. If you've been there, you know, but they're pretty bad. It's just a constant bounce up and down and around. And, you know, I'm driving along and I'm thinking I'm going too slow. They think I'm going too fast. But you can spend from here to Isimani and back you can spend most of a day just going up there for a meeting. Now let's see. Kololo. Kololo's down. Kololo actually is pretty easy to get to. Let's see. Ahemi, Kitisengwa, Kololo is right down to this area. I'm sorry. Why am I not seeing it? Yes.
Kololo is you have to go south.
Oh yeah, it's there it is, right there. There's Kololo, right there. So here's Kololo. The main road, it's near the main road to Dar es Salaam. The main road comes in, goes around here, up here, and then goes out this way. So it's near the main road. So there's Kololo there. One of the questions I saw posted was, how do we pick places? Well, we don't pick places. We tell people what we do. We have a radio program with something around 50,000 listeners, call-in radio program where we give advice on ag or finance or whatever. We talk about a ring of hope. People call in with questions, and then they ask us to come see them. The diocese promotes us, and we come and visit the villages, and we tell them what's needed, but this program requires you to take your initiative. We at Ring of Hope are not going to do anything for you. We're going to help you do it for yourself. We're going to train you. We're going to give you access to capital. We're going to help you buy things and sell things, but you have to do it. It is your own initiative. So villages will decide they want a Ring of Hope, and they'll contact us. We'll go talk to them. We'll tell them how to organize and how to get a group together, but they must do this. They must fill out their own registration papers and so forth. And part of it is they must raise money. Now, most villages can't raise enough of their own money. It takes about $5,000 to start a Sacos, to start the program. It costs about $1,500 in various fees. You have to pay the government to come out. You have to pay registrations and so forth. Costs about $1,500 raw cost. And the government requires $3,000 to $4,000 in the bank. So that's roughly the cost. Yes.
Tom, this is the one that Alan Brudlog helped to start. You should tell the story about how he got involved.
Oh, well, Alan Brudlog was a gentleman from Elbow Lake, Minnesota, who came to one of our talks. He was a farmer, got very excited, and started donating and wanted to go to Aringa with me. So he met me in Aringa. He and his girlfriend met Sandy and I. We always travel together, Sandy and I do. And we were running around, and we went out. One of the places we visited was Kololo. And they wanted to start, but they didn't have enough money. Now, at that point, it was a little less than 5,000. I'm an old man, so I forget things. See, that's my excuse. So I forget the exact number. Let's say it was 3,000, something like that. And we were there, and they were talking about how much money they had, and we'd put in some money. And as I recall, I think they were $1,500 short. And Alan was so enthused and so moved by the people. He went and he thought about it, and he came over to me and he said, I'd like to put in the rest of the money. So we started Kololo. Alan was a very good supporter. He died of cancer a couple years ago.
Oh, ALS. He had ALS.
You're right, ALS. I apologize. See, it's a good thing I pointed out I'm an old man and I forget things, right? I get confused, right? That's right, ALS. He was just very, very tough. In fact, at his funeral, the money at his funeral, he sent to A Ring of Hope. He just was very touched by the people. I have to say, for me, that's the biggest thing. I'm Norwegian, and I don't usually get very emotional about things, but there are times when I'm meeting with people, I can almost cry, because these are people who want to work. These are people who want to do something for their family. They want to send their kids to school. They want to feed them well, but they've got nothing to work with. And they don't know how to work anyway, because nobody's ever taught them, and nobody will give them anything. A few $100, and a family will pull itself together, get a better house, send the kids to school, and just change everything. I mean, it's just, I look at if I was there, that would be me. I would have nothing to, and there'd be nothing I could do. To me, it's just, and to me, frankly, I'm not one to give things to people. I do, of course, to people who have no way to help themselves, but I prefer people to help themselves. And that's what we have here. We have a lot of people who really are willing to work and want to help themselves. There's just nothing to work with. There's just nothing there. Well, that's kind of the Ring of Hope story. I mean,
grounds a lot of the work that we do as local mission and then global mission. And I love the devotion, Elizabeth, and the idea of relationships and community. I mean, that's really what we're going to talk about tonight, is how these relationships, first of all, a relationship with God empowers us and sends us forth to do the work that we're called to. So just in the way of introductions, who are we? Justin Grimm. I am the Director for Evangelical Mission and Assistant to the Bishop for Next Generation Ministries. I've been in that role for almost 6 years. That means I work with our local mission priorities. I work with our new starts and our redevelopments and all kinds of vitality stuff. I'm going to talk tonight about our actual mission starts and our redevelopments, as well as a little bit of work going on through a campaign that's coming up. And I get to do that work. Before this, I was a mission developer. I started a congregation in Michigan in 2005 and did that for 10 years until I accepted this call. With me tonight, as some of you already know him, is the Reverend Peter Harrett, who will tell us a little more about himself.
Yep. Good evening, folks. My name is Pastor Peter Harrets, and I serve as the director of Bega Kwa Bega, our companion synod relationship with the Iringa Diocese of the Lutheran Church in Tanzania. That's about 85% of my portfolio with the synod. I'm also an assistant to the bishop who helps with other things as needed. That's included some young adult ministries in the past. And more recently, it's helping our congregations and leaders figure out how to better accompany local neighbors as well as global ones, and kind of lean into intercultural learning and kind of figure out how to navigate differences that make a difference and all the different diversities that our ministries bring us across.
Yeah, and it's great for us to be together. We're not spending a lot of time together except on staff meetings because we're not in the office. So hi, Peter. Good to see you. And our work does, a lot of our work does work together. Why isn't my thing working? Here we go. Who are you? So if we were in person and we had a little bit more time, I would want to hear your stories, because to the point of relationship, I believe ministry happens in relationship and in partnership that way. And I'd love to hear, I know a little bit about King of Kings, but if you would do me a favor, humor me. In my notes, it says they will do this. So I hope you do in the chat, or just shout out, who's King of Kings? Tell me like one thing you're really excited about that's going on in the ministry of King of Kings. And we'll look awkwardly at each other for a while you're typing this into the chat. What makes King of Kings King of Kings? What's exciting about it? What are you up to? I know it's a big question. Don't overthink it. Do what you can.
We have a lot of Zooming going on nowadays.
You're Zoomers. Is that right? I love it. Yeah. What else? What else makes King of Kings King of Kings? That wasn't Richard, but it came from Richard's screen. So I don't know what your name is. Family. Great. What else? Who are you? Somebody said family. Carol said family.
That's what puts us in community.
What's that?
Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah. Right on. What else? What else is King of Kings?
Helping each other, getting through day to day, trying to help others, always in different ways.
Love it. Becky put in the chat, I like our mission statement, which is to feed physical and spiritual hunger and the hunger to be in community. Wow, that's really good. Thanks, Becky. Anybody else want to chime in?
I like what we do, the amount that we give to others, whether it's missions locally or internationally. I was just really pleased to be at the meeting that we had, the annual meeting this last Sunday, to be there in person and to see the amount that we've given, 165,000 plus to different missions.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks, Bonnie. I know when I think of King of Kings, I think of mission. I was blessed to come spend some time at a church council meeting a couple, maybe 18 months ago, maybe a little longer than that. It was before COVID. And I was just really impressed with all the ways that you say, Bonnie, that you guys give back and give to the community, either locally or globally, and you take care of each other. I wish we had more time. We don't, because Peter's got his time here, so I'm going to keep us rolling. But thanks for sharing a little bit. I think sometimes the church needs to do a better job of thinking about what do we do good and celebrate it, right? I mean, we can always come up with the things we can do better. But hey, church, you're doing great things. Let's celebrate that and be excited about the way God's using you. So thanks for a little bit of that. And then back to my slideshow, maybe. All right, who is the Synod? Well, first of all, the St. Paul Area Synod is us. It's us here on this Zoom screen tonight. It's 108 congregations and mission starts, about 112,000 baptized members on the East Metro with partnerships globally. But when we say St. Paul Area Synod, it's all of us, those congregations, those mission starts, those people that are together. That's who we are. And together we do this ministry, community, relationship. That's what makes it possible. Several years ago, and this is very bad PowerPoint etiquette, I apologize. You shouldn't have that many lines on a screen, but several years ago, the statement of purpose, Peter and I were part of the writing team, and I just wanted to share this screen with you, and I want to read it, and I'll read it slowish so that you can hear it, but I want to go through this real quick because it really grounds the local ministry we do and the global ministry we do in our partnerships. So, the St. Paul Area Synod is made up of congregations, mission starts, and institutions committed to growing in faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Living out of our identity as Lutherans, we recognize we are grasped by grace and are free to devote our energy to being church in a way that is rooted in tradition and open to experimentation. This means we'll show up where we've not been before. We'll walk with those who have felt excluded, hurt, or indifferent to the witness of the church. We will act with the confidence that God calls us to meet Christ in every one of our neighbors. Christ has begun this good work among us, and it's renewing us today for, and here's some of our pillars: deeper faith in the living God, wider engagement in God's world, bolder trust in God's work through us. And then in our common work, we commit to build partnerships that are local, global, and mutually transformative. You're going to hear a little bit about both of those tonight, the local and the global. We commit to embolden our public witness to justice and service and to welcome possibilities for being church in a new day. We're not there yet, but we're on our way together. So that statement of purpose really is some grounding work for us to live into two aspects of the gospel. The Great Commandment. I can't see many of you, but raise your hands if you know what the Great Commandment is. Does anybody want to take a stab at it? Elizabeth, you raise your hand first. What's the Great Commandment?
I think it's the commandment to go out and make disciples of all nations.
Almost. Save that answer for the next question. Who wants to take a stab at the Great Commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Elizabeth, what's the Great Commission?
To go out and make disciples.
Yes. So we, as the St. Paul Area Synod, have committed to do both the Great Commandment and the Great Commission, to love our Lord, to love each other, to love ourselves, to love, and then to share the good news of Jesus Christ through the Great Commission. We really feel it has to be both of those together. To that end, I'm not going to talk a lot about this. We are committing to a capital campaign to raise $2.5 million, roughly, to do the work of local mission and build up partnerships to work with young adults and diversity and lots of other initiatives, specifically a $1.3 million project, hopefully, on the east side of St. Paul with multiple partners to live into this Great Commandment, Great Commission. Stay tuned for more info on that, or I'd be happy to answer questions at some point. So, What does this look like lived out? Here's some examples. Local mission. In our St. Paul Area Synod, we have 7 mission starts. These are congregations that are not organized. These are anywhere from a couple years old to 10 or 11 years old, depending on which one. These are congregations that get support financially through the Synod budget, through your mission support that goes to them, partnership through the ELCA, and then through a special campaign where I strive to raise about $100,000 a year to help support them. Several of these are in our ethnic-specific communities or are on communities that are kind of on the edge, if you will, of faith. We also have 2 intentional redevelopments. Yeah, some of you might know the pastor Liz Idy. Does anybody know that name? So Liz, I don't know how, but somebody talked her into taking a risk and stepping forward on faith to go and do what's called a redevelopment. So she's at Lutheran Church of Peace in Maplewood, taking her mission heart that was partially formed at King of Kings and doing the work at a congregation that really was about ready to close and decided we were not quite done. So we got some funding, we got some training, and we put Liz in there to kind of steer this ship and to take them to the next step. Thank you for that gift, and I hope you know you are part of that, because Liz is the pastor she is today partly because of you, and I mean that. And then Global Mission, which Peter's going to talk about a little later. BKB in Iringa, Tanzania, and then the ELOG, which is in Guatemala. Specifically, I wanted to talk about a few examples. Shelby's Table. So Shelby's Table is a food truck ministry, a ministry of word and service led by Deacon Kari Alice Olson. It's people on the street that are loved and served, that are fed. Lines up a little bit with your mission statement. They're fed spiritually and they're fed with a really good meal. And currently, they serve on Thursdays at Faith Lutheran Church in Frogtown and Fridays at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in the Midway. It's a pay-as-you-can cafe, which means some people pay nothing, and some people pay $10 or $20 or $100, depending on what happens. The plan is to expand that and to open to a 3rd day sometime this spring. Volunteers are always needed to help make the food, and they're very COVID safe. I can share more information on that. They are only able to do this ministry because of volunteers and because of the financial support of congregations like you. Humble Walk. Some of you might know Humble Walk. It's one of our older mission starts. They're about 12 years old. They would say they're a congregation for people that maybe have been turned away from the church, young adults, people going through different things in their life, and they kind of divide their life into three spheres, if you will. Church life. This is all pre-COVID, where they'd gather on Sunday in the congregational setting in the art house. They'd have worship together like a regular church, if you will. Then they have bar life. They go to the bar. They are one of our congregations that does beers and hymns or pop and hymns, depending on who's there. It's all ages that meet, and they do storytelling events and hymn sings as a way to engage that and to have a community there, which would be partially a separate community. And then they have a part of their life that's park life, where they gather outside in the neighborhood park. This is a very neighborhood-centric congregation that has grown to include other people. Pastor Jody Hogue is the pastor there doing this work. Christ the Servant Lutheran Church in Vadnais Heights, another one of our redevelopments. So similar to what Pastor Liz has done, they're about 9 months ahead of where LCP is. And this is one of our official redevelopments. Like I said, it's a restart. Again, they had voted to close, and it didn't pass. And then an interim pastor came in, and they started to realize that they really did love each other, and they loved Jesus, and they loved their community, and they realized there wasn't any other church in Vadnais Heights, and they didn't think God was done with them. So when I started about 6 years ago, one of the first things I did was started to work with Christ the Servant to come up with a mission and vision plan to be the church in the world today. And they're doing great. They're connecting with their community. They're doing ministry with ears to the ground, and they're growing towards sustainability. Pastor Chris Stubing has been the redeveloper. Unfortunately, due to his wife's work, good for her, sad for us, they are relocating to Texas. I called them last week when they were having all those problems. I'm like, you sure you want to move to Texas, man? But anyway, they're going there, and we're going to have to find another redeveloper pastor to help serve that congregation. One more example. You can see that's Luther Seminary's chapel. If you've ever been there, that's one half of it. This was Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. This is our African National Anuwak ministry called Foundation of Life, led by Pastor Gilo Agua. It's in partnership with the Presbyterian Church USA, hand in hand, financially supporting that with us. About 80 or 90 in worship. That day on Christmas, they had about 500. because all the Anawaks in Minnesota, I swear, were there. And Gilo is kind of a pastor to many of them and really a teacher for all of them. And it's been a great partnership. They also teach classes. These are first-generation refugees, new people to the country. They don't understand anything. They don't know if they need mittens and things like that. They don't know how to handle police or parking, parking tickets. So they're doing classes about life skills as well as faith, all rooted in the gospel of Jesus. And Pastor Gillard told you a little bit about that. A couple other things that I want to make sure and share about. Other new starts, Minnesota Faith Chinese. It's a Chinese congregation that worships at Roseville. It's a Chinese Mandarin language. We're looking for a Chinese speaker to be their next pastor. If any of you speak Chinese and feel called to the gospel, let me know. We'll ordain you on the spot. Joy Fellowship is connected with them. It's their young adult outreach out of the Chinese church. Cristo Rey is our Latino ministry. It is in partnership with Christ the King in New Brighton. Pastor to be Ana Becerra is just finished now. This is another one of the just the folks that are in their congregation as far as worshipers go with the issues of immigration and settling into a new way of life. And then Hope Lutheran on the east side of St. Paul is doing a parallel New Start. So this is a congregation that's over 100 years old. There's about 20 people left. 3 years ago, I met with their leadership and said, here's some options. We can close, we can sell the building, or we can look at a different way of being church. So they're essentially living out their life right now, the 20 or so folks that are left in worship. And at the same time, Pastor Andrew Tengwall is starting a new community on the east side of St. Paul that's going to be called something else. It might be Hope Abounds. Nobody knows. But they're using their resources, their buildings, their finances, and then they're giving him the space and the permission to start a new ministry alongside of that. It's really exciting. And actually, they're looking at possibly selling their building in the near future to really bound this new ministry forward. Forward thinking, relational thinking, gospel thinking. It's really exciting. And then Lutheran Church of Peace I already talked about. That's a local spin in about 14 minutes, and now I have to yield my time to the gentleman from St. Paul. Peter Harritz is going to take over, and then I'll be around for questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Pastor Justin Grimm. It's fantastic to be here with all of you, and I hope you're hearing how your connections with the Synod bring you into deep relationship with the whole network of ministries across the East Metro and other parts of the state. And what I would like to do now is help to zoom you out a little bit more and realize how your connections through the St. Paul Area Synod and through the ELCA connect you to a much wider world. We'll see if this works okay. Let's see. So we'll come on in and go this way. Thumbs up if you can see. Hopefully that's working.
It's not, Peter. I'm just seeing it in place of your beautiful face.
Yeah.
I would just
spotlight me.
Yep, now you're good.
There we go. So talking about global partnerships and shifting perspectives on life and ministry around the world and back here in Minnesota. As you've heard, we, the people of the St. Paul Area Synod, have two different companion synod relationships. The first is with the Augustinian Lutheran Church in Guatemala, the ELOG, and the second is with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania's Iringa Diocese, one of 26 dioceses of the Lutheran Church in Tanzania. Those are two small samples of a much larger network of relationships that we're connected to. Through the ELCA and the international body of the Lutheran World Federation, you are part of a rich and vibrant community of faith that crosses all of the continents. The dots on this map just give you a sense of some of the vibrant pockets of Lutheranism around the world. Currently, the ELCA has about 3.5 million members here in North America. Our partners in Guatemala, there's about 3,700 members of the Augustinian Lutheran Church there and another Lutheran body. If you jump down to Tanzania, there's about 7.9 million members in Tanzania these days. And when I started this work 7 years ago, they were closer to 4 or 5 million. So the church in Tanzania is booming and growing. Just north of that in Ethiopia is one of the largest Lutheran churches on the planet, the Mekane Yesu Church in Ethiopia. And then going north from there, it's Lutheran churches in Germany. There's about 10.8 million Lutherans in Germany, 6 million in Scandinavia. Over in India, there's about 4.4 million. On the island of Sumatra in Indonesia, 5.75 million Lutherans. Then if you go all the way over to Papua New Guinea, 2 million Lutherans on that on that island nation. So we are part of a much wider and wilder community of faith than just the East Metro here. That's part of the connections that you have by being part of the St. Paul Area Synod and Lutheran's Lutheran denomination, ELCA. Our work around the world, and specifically with our two companion relationships, is shaped by the theory and practice of accompaniment. It's a way of doing mission and engaging in mission that values walking together in a solidarity that practices interdependence and mutuality. It's a lot of lingo in there, so I'll slow it down and say it again. Accompaniment is the way that the ELCA is a national body, but also the St. Paul Area Synod is a reflection of that. This is the way that we do mission. It's specifically how we do mission with our global neighbors, and it's also how we do mission with our local neighbors as well. It means walking together in a solidarity that practices interdependence and mutuality. This way of going about mission is marked by 5 different values. They're signposts. We know that we're doing this when the work that we do together is marked by our mutuality. When the work that we do is not one person doing something for another, but it's when it's people doing things together. You heard that time and time again in Justin's rapid fire description of the local mission partners. It's what happened. It's what King of Kings is doing with your partners in Quilolo. It's what other churches are doing with their partners in Guatemala. It's being together at the same table. We try to do these things in a manner that's inclusive, where we're aware of who's at the table, and we really try to be aware of who is not at the table at the same time. Whose voices are being heard, whose voices are being excluded, and why? And how can we draw the circle ever wider? The third of these accompaniment values is vulnerability. It's one of the more difficult ones for people from North America to do, but it says that there are pieces in my life that are in need of the gifts that other people have, just as I have gifts and resources and skills to share with somebody else. There's this reciprocity to relationships that happen when we admit that we have need as well as ability to help others. As Americans, we tend to pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps people. We tend to take pride in the great things that we can accomplish, and we tend to think of ourselves as being invulnerable, of being impermeable, about being superhuman. I think that's my knee-jerk take on the last 12 months is that we've had to reckon with the fact that we are indeed vulnerable. And there may be ways that other people can step up and support us in prayer as we deal with our humanity and vulnerability. The fourth value that shapes our global engagements is that of empowerment. And here I understand power to be nothing more and nothing less than the ability to act. Power is nothing more and nothing less than the ability to act. So in the mission activities that we do with our global partners, we try to do all of them in ways that build the capacity of everybody who's involved to act to the fullness of their abilities, to fully use the gifts that God has blessed them with in whatever arenas or locations that they may be in. The fifth value that tells us we're living into these accompaniment practices well is the value of sustainability. Not just financial sustainability, not just environmental sustainability, but relational sustainability. Again, you heard Justin say it's relationship, relationship, relationship. How do we do what we do with the people that we do things with in ways that will make sure that these relationships go on and on and on? How do we invite new people in? How do you identify new leaders? How do you intentionally knit the fabric of our lives together? These are not just one and done projects that you drop a cash bomb on and then walk away. These are commitments that you make to people in different corners of the world, and commitments that you hope will be there for generations to come. Within the context of the St. Paul Area Synod and our two relationships, accompaniment plays out in these 2 different phrases. The one that characterizes our relationships in Tanzania, it's bega kwa bega. It's a Swahili phrase that means shoulder to shoulder and reflects the idea that we're walking together side by side, not with one partner pulling, poking, pushing, prodding the other. It's saying that both partners are equally engaged in mission. It's that value of mutuality lived out side by side. Caminando juntos is the Spanish equivalent of saying we are walking together. So in both of these, you can see accompaniment practices playing out. In both of our global partnerships, we've keyed in on 3 activities that will show that that we center our activities on. You can say, I'm in relationship, I'm in relationship, I'm in relationship. or I love you, I love you, I love you. But if those are just words and they're not followed up with actual actions, relationships tend to atrophy. So we strengthen these relationships both in Guatemala and in Tanzania through three activities that we do with one another. The first is we commit to praying for one another. That you folks at King of Kings, you have partners in a church named Kilolo. And the hope and the intent is if we're living into these values, you are regularly praying for the people of Kilolo. And I can guarantee that they are praying for you, especially since they know how hard this pandemic is hitting us in the United States right now. And as numbers start to peak in Tanzania, I hope your prayers are just as fervent for them. The second activity that we engage in with one another is presence, trying to physically visit one another and be with one another. At least that was back in the days when you could travel fairly easily. But even now, presence takes the forms of international Zooms. Presence takes the forms of email exchanges with one another, or WhatsApp calls, or phone calls, or whatever it takes. But sharing life together is what that second activity is all about. And the third key activity that we focus on together is doing projects. You learn a whole lot about somebody else when you actually have to pick up a hammer and pound some nails in together, or actually work together to make something be accomplished. As Americans, our cultural valuation tends to jump to that third pillar first, and to talk to identify first and foremost the things that we do for somebody else, to identify the cash that we give, to quantify the bricks that we build, and that's the bias we tend to walk in the door with. For our global companions, both in Guatemala and especially in Tanzania, it's that first practice of prayer that is essential. I've talked to leaders in the Iringa diocese, and when they say, and they're honest about this, they say that if this relationship were ever to fall away, the thing that we want and we covet the most is the fact that you pray for us. To know that there are people who we may never meet face to face, who are holding us in prayer with some specificity, that changes lives and that moves mountains. So these three pillars work together, but they're structured in that way, following the wisdom of our global companions, saying first, these relationships need to be rooted in prayer, mutual concern for one another. Second, from that spiritual concern for one another, it involves a desire to deeply get to know one another. And then once we get to know one another, then it's figuring out what we can do together. So it's prayer, it's presence, and then it's projects. Within the Tanzanian partnership specifically, where I spend about 85% of my time directing, in any given year, I'm in Tanzania about 3 months out of the year. 2020 has been a little bit different. 2021's also looking to be different, but I'm privileged to spend a fair amount of time with our partners. And along the way, you pick up proverbs like this one. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. These relationships that we're in, because they're built with an eye towards sustainability, they move with an intentional amount of slowness, of wanting to make sure that we are doing things with and for one another at a slow and steady pace. It can be quicker just to cut a check somewhere and to send some resources without many relational strings attached. But it is those relational strings that knit us together, that knit the global body of Christ together. So yeah, we ask people not to just go alone, but to work intentionally with our partners, and together we'll go far and sustain one another for many generations to come. The center of our relationship with the Lutheran Church in Tanzania, it's in the town of Iringa, in the region of Iringa, which is in the southern highlands of Tanzania. Iringa, for those who haven't been, it was a German colonial town, but before that, it was a hill fort of the Hehe people, a place up high on a plateau that was a great spot for defense against other folks, but also it's one of the agricultural heartlands of Tanzania. There's lots of commerce. The market is bustling. There's plenty of food here, and they feed much of the country. But it's a predominantly agricultural zone. But the town has a fair number of people who've settled there. There's businessmen, there's active trade, and it's becoming a center of higher education and learning, thanks in part to investments that the Lutheran Church is making. Several universities have set up shop there, and more students are calling the streets of Iringa home. And Iringa town is the home base of the Iringa diocese, the diocese that we share a relationship with. The center of this relationship is again realizing that we are in relationship not just with one another, but all of the things that we do are rooted together in Christ. We enjoy worship with one another. We enjoy celebrating time with one another, and the heart of visits that happen again. This all begins with prayer, and it's centering all of these relationships and what God is doing in each of our lives, and the way that this God's Spirit is calling us to engage with one another in God's mission. And what's amazing, the history of this 30-year-old partnership is seeing what happens when that Spirit is activated, and what happens as people are called to live out the gifts that they have been blessed with. Amazing things happen. Amazing things happen when folks are able to spend time with one another, to be welcomed into communities halfway across the planet, as though it is your own home. How many of you folks from King of Kings who are on this call have had a chance to travel to Tanzania, or know somebody in the congregation who has? So you know what it's like when it says that you have this home that you've maybe never been to halfway across the planet, where folks come out and greet you and welcome you and embrace you in ways that are just incredibly generous and profound with their hospitality, sharing God's love in ways that speak to some of our deepest needs. So part of this relationship is being welcomed home, finding out that you have sisters and brothers who know you, who care for you, and who can speak to some of our greatest needs. At the same time, we collaborate to work on some of the projects that speak to some of their greatest needs too. As a network of congregations, there's about 68 congregations in the United States, partner with about 70 congregations in the Iringa Diocese. And one of the major things that we do is sponsor children's education. You, people of King of Kings, you are generous supporters of students at Iringa Diocese secondary schools from your partnership in Kilolo. All told, we send about 1,000 students a year into secondary school. And as more and more students are completing their secondary studies, we're finding university education and post-secondary studies to be a growing edge of this relationship. The building you see there on the top right, that's a new science building that's still under construction at the University of Iringa. One of the first private universities in the entire country was born out of this relationship between St. Paul and Iringa. But we don't just grow students, we don't just grow universities, we also grow forests of trees. The picture right below the building, it's the retired Bishop Mdegela, I believe, standing in the middle of tree fields. It's a tree nursery. Our friends there are doing economic development. They're planting trees, they're reforesting the country. Barren hillsides are beginning to burst forth with greenery again. The trees eventually will be able to be harvested and replanted as economic development. They're beginning to, most of those are pine trees and eucalyptus. They're beginning to sell or to plant fruit trees as well, so they can grow some more food and fruits to be able to sell and nourish themselves. And those are just, you know, a glimpse of some of the work that's been done. I understand last night this group was able to meet with leaders from Iringa Hope, another one of our affiliates. In addition to the congregations that are working in Iringa, there's this whole network of affiliates and these different development groups who are helping to make life better. Iringa Hope is one of them. There's also groups like St. Paul Partners who are doing water, health and sanitation and hygiene. There's a whole group of doctors who are helping to build up a medical system. There's a group of people invested in children who are disadvantaged, the Friends of Huruma Center. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways that people can connect with one another through this relationship and live into the gifts that they've been given. This work is stewarded and shepherded. I'm privileged to be able to help accompany folks like you in this work. And in Iringa, we have a team of people who are called to help make this relationship bear fruit as well. The man on the left there is Pastor Joseph Luila. He's the new coordinator of this Bega Quabega partnership on the side of the Iringa Diocese. He is my counterpart and helps to make sure that communication flows smoothly between people and partners. The fella on the right is Mr. Frank Mkocha. He's our scholarship clerk who helps make sure that all of the students are where they say they are, who helps track all of those 1,000+ students over 6 or more years of study. And then the couple in the middle, they're the newest additions to the BKB team. They're not quite in Iringa yet. Their names are Ryan and Estine Bowes, and they've been identified to be short-term mission personnel working on behalf of the St. Paul Area Synod, and they'll live year-round in Iringa for the next 2 years. They were able to get vaccinated thanks to some connections they had with family in the county health department where they live in Kansas, and they are clear to fly in the next couple of weeks. So we are grateful for their service on our behalf and the ways that they will help stitch our lives together. And really, life together, that's what this is all about. It's what these companion synod relationships are about. It's what this network of churches on the east side is all about. It's about sharing life. We are on the road together. And as we imagine the future of this partnership, we imagined more 30 years ago when the partnership first sprung up, the focus really was on development. It was on building projects. It was on the things that we could do and the number of students that we could sponsor. But as the church in Tanzania continues to boom and grow, as we look to the future, it becomes less and less focused on these development projects and more on trying to find ways that we can spend time with and learn from one another. Justin was part of a cohort of pastors who went over 2 years ago now to figure out what it means to be a pastor in one of the fastest growing churches on the planet, to share our wisdom about what it means to serve here and to learn from what it means to be a pastor in a faith community in East Africa. A year ago, so I guess that would have been summer 2019, pre-pandemic, we had a joint choir exercise where musicians from across the St. Paul Area Synod joined singers from across the Iringa Diocese and spent 2 weeks making music together, learning to sing each other's songs and growing deeper in faith and relationship with one another along the way. As we picture the future of this partnership, yes, it includes continuing to sponsor students. Yes, it includes continuing to do some construction projects, development work, supporting efforts like the people of Iringa Hope. But more and more, it's about finding ways that we can live alongside and learn from one another in the multiplicity of ways that God calls us into faithful mission in the world. It's an exciting time to be in relationship with local partners, with global partners, and I'm grateful for the chance to be here with you all this evening. So.
So I thought I would just start with giving you a little preview of our COVID-19 response report that we will be sending out later this week. It really highlights the enormous change we've seen at the food shelf due to the pandemic over the last year, and the different ways that we're providing that support to our community. As you can see from the photo, in the report, all of our services are provided differently. They're provided outdoors now through drive-up services. And we're now, routinely seeing over 300 families a day when we serve. On Monday, we served 300 families, and today we serve more than 300 as well. So it's just been a really fundamental shift in our service to the community. And since we can't do a real in-person tour, I thought a good way for you to see our model in action might be to watch our short video that we put out last fall that just kind of explains how our programs work. Because so much has changed at the food shelf, and because so many people right now are in need and maybe have never used a food shelf before in their life. They don't know how it works. They don't know what to expect. So we've created some videos. We created one in English and one in Spanish that explains our programs. So I will show one here briefly.
There's supposed to be audio with this.
I'm not hearing any audio.
Yeah.
Happening.
Oh, you're not hearing any audio?
Mm-mm.
Oh, shoot.
Audio.
Let's see. Well, I'm not sure why that would be. So I might just have to explain to you how the programs work without the video. Maybe we can send out a link to the video afterwards. Does that sound good? Okay.
Can you just talk while the video goes?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll maybe silent it so I can't hear it. But so in this, you can just see how our programs are working. That the card comes up and we ask a number of questions. We ask if they need diapers, if they need any feminine hygiene items. Then we have a rack of specialty items that people can choose from. So those are culturally appropriate foods and special diet food like gluten-free items, other items that not everybody is going to want. So we don't want to put it in the pre-packed boxes, but we know some people are really going to need. So we provide those as choices that people can add on to the boxes that they're receiving. So it's been a constantly evolving shopping model, and one that we are always working to get feedback from the people that we're serving and making sure that it works for them. We asked just a few simple questions from people at the car door, and then we load the vehicle or load the food into the vehicle directly. We work to make the process as simple and easy and dignified as possible, so that people really feel welcomed and are able to get the help that they need. We also are able to provide deliveries to people that aren't able to come to the food shelf, whether it's because they are sick with COVID. Sometimes they need to stay home, but they still need food, or they have a household member who is sick and they need to stay home. And so we are able to deliver to them, and we right now are providing about 50 deliveries a week through that service as well. So I think I will move to the next section. So in the next slide, you'll see the just huge increase that we have had at the food shelf, going from 58,000 visits in 2019 to over 163,000 visits in 2020. We are regularly serving double and usually triple the number of families that we were serving before COVID. And the number of pounds of food that we distributed last year was 2.4 million pounds of food. So these are numbers that we never ever would have imagined even a year ago. It was almost a year ago when we switched over our model to this drive-up model, and we started to get an inkling of what was coming. And we never would have imagined this level of need, and that our organization would be called to this level of service a year ago. But we're able to do that because of the 752 volunteers that we had just last year that contributed towards the work that we're doing. And so not only have the number of people that are coming to our programs increased dramatically, but the number of programs that we're offering has increased as well. We are providing those food deliveries. It started just as deliveries that we're providing on Tuesdays. Now we are doing them on Tuesdays and Fridays because the number that are requesting the deliveries are increasing over time. I also in this slide, you can see the increase in not just the number of times that people are visiting us, but the sheer number of households that are utilizing our programs. So this is talking about unique households, which means they might have visited us several times over the course of December, but these are separate addresses and separate families. In December of 2019, it was 600. In December 2020, it was almost 2,000. So the just raw numbers of people that are turning to us is increasing dramatically. And a lot of people, particularly in Woodbury, we've seen a large growth in the number of families utilizing our programs from Woodbury. A lot of those folks have never needed help before. So when they're calling us with those really very basic questions. Do I need to make an appointment? What kind of information do I need to get? They're very intimidated by the idea of coming and getting help. And so that's one thing we've really taken a lot of pride in, is that we've worked to make this experience as welcoming and as friendly as possible, because we know that it was really difficult for them to ask for help for the first time. And we want people to have that experience and feel that this is something that's okay. It's okay to ask for help, and that they'll drive away and they will get a trunk full of milk and meat and fresh produce and other basic household needs that can help them, stay healthy and stay active as they deal with the other problems that they're encountering during a difficult time. So we've really worked very hard on that, and I think that's part of the reason why people feel comfortable turning to us. Earlier, I mentioned that we've been adding programs during the pandemic, and one that we're really proud of is a program that we have in landfall. Last summer, we partnered with Washington County to offer a lot of different bonus distributions, large-scale distributions all over the county. And one of them was at Landfall Mobile Home Park. And we know that this is an area of deep need within our traditional service area. And so through that interaction, we decided that we wanted to launch a weekly program where the people of Landfall can know that every week we will be back, and we will be distributing milk and meat and fresh produce and other basic household essentials. So, and Kathy and Craig are some of our MVP volunteers for that. So maybe they'll talk about Landfall as well. But that's been a really good and instructive program for us. We serve about 80 families every week there. And what we found is almost none of the families that we are serving now in Landfall were coming to our food shelf before we went there. Even though this is an area of deep poverty and a lot of the households were in a great deal of need, a lot of them lack transportation. So we learned that by bringing the program to them, that we are helping a lot of new households, that even though it's really only 6 or 7 minute drive between Landfall and our food shop, that it was a barrier for a lot of those households. And so we are taking a look at the results that we've had in Landfall and are looking at other areas in need within Woodbury, within Oakdale, and other areas where we can bring our food to communities that both lack transportation and have significant need. So in terms of opportunities for volunteering and for partnering, we have a lot of different programs where we are utilizing volunteers. We're a volunteer-run organization. In terms of volunteer power is really what makes our organization go. Every day when we're serving thousands of pounds of food, and it is the volunteers like Kathy and Craig and so many others that are making that happen. And so there's lots of opportunities to make a real impact in our work. That can be at the produce fairs, where we usually have, it's usually a church group or other community group that takes on a weekend for a produce fair. They're usually a lot of fun. And as long as the weather is good, which our produce fair on Saturday was beautiful. I couldn't have asked for better weather in late February for a produce fair where we serve 560 families. So always produce fairs, mobile food shelves. We are looking at doubling the number of mobile food shelves that we have right now in the next year. And so our mobile food shelves go to right now 5 different senior living facilities where we have food that we pack up and we bring to the senior living facilities. In the past, people would be able to go into a community room and pick out their items at each of the mobile food shelves, but we can't do that right now because of COVID. So we're giving them pre-packed boxes of food. But now we're looking at, are there other areas, low-income housing areas, other residential areas where we can bring the food to them and help reduce those barriers for transportation. So our goal is to double the number of mobile food shelves we have. Our landfall distributions, we're always looking for more volunteers to help fill in for those. Not only are we distributing food as a drive-up model for the people that have vehicles and are able to go in landfall, but we also pack up the food and put them in transportation buses through a nonprofit called New Tracks, where we load the food up onto their bus and then they deliver it directly to any mobile home that requests a delivery. So there's a lot of great volunteer opportunities for that. And then I'm happy to say that we have a new project that we are just launching now, that we are going to be opening up a new site off of 694 and Century Avenue, near Century College, but in Oakdale, so on this side of 694. And at that new site, it's not going to be a food shelf, it's going to be a free food market. It's going to be a different kind of a model where in a more of a storefront, smaller footprint, where people are welcome to come in as often as they need to and pick out a day or two worth of fresh produce or fresh items. Most of the food in this new market model is going to be from local grocery stores, so grocery rescue. So it'll be food that just probably came off the grocery store shelf that morning and is now being provided to the community at no cost, and that people are going to be welcome to come there as often as they need to provide fresh and healthy food for their families. So it's going to be a new way that we can help reduce the barriers and increase access to food. I think it'll be a great addition for the students at Century College, that when they're done with school, they can bring home dinner for their family. And then there's a mobile home park that's nearby that we are hoping to serve, especially through that new site. So it's a great new opportunity, and we'll definitely be looking for new volunteers to help us with that program. So that's the big picture of everything that we've been doing at CCEFS. And I just wanted to end the introduction to just say thank you, because the King of Kings Church has been just a tremendous partner for us as we've evolved over the years, but especially in the last year as we've worked to respond to this need that we couldn't have imagined but we've been able to, you know, we had the big shoulders, and we rose to the challenge, and that we're able to serve the number of families that we're serving right now. We're only able to do that because of our amazing partners and our volunteers. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Stillwater in a church, and the church took the program over. It outgrew that governance, and we became our own nonprofit. And so we've been functioning as our own nonprofit since 2016. Kayla, were you going to put any of the PowerPoint up, or?
Yeah, so I have to, am I able to screen share right now? I do have a PowerPoint.
Yeah, does it allow you to? I think you should have access to.
Oh, yes, I do. Okay, let me get that pulled up real quick. Okay, can everyone see my slides?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, then we can go on to the next slide.
Can you see the second slide that I'm on?
No, Kayla, put it in PowerPoint or in presentation mode.
I'm not sure I know how to do that. Dee, can you walk me through it?
Yep, down at the very bottom. See all those little symbols?
Yes.
And then to the right, there's different ways to display.
Yep.
Go to the very last one that looks like an overhead projector. And click on that one.
Okay. Any different?
Nope.
You at the top where it says play from beginning.
That's
Yeah.
how
There we go. There it is.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm just going to share our vision and our mission with you. Our vision we absolutely love, and it's that we believe in a community that knows we are all connected. Our mission statement is St. Croix Family Resource Center helps youth and families renew hope by opening doors to sustainable housing, financial stability, and healthy community connections. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our programs. Oh, I guess I'm going to talk about our staff. So we have now grown to a size of 5 in the picture. Yes, yay! In the picture there, from front, kind of, well, let's see, maybe left to right. Alexa, she is our Youth Connections Coordinator, and she just celebrated her 1-year anniversary with us 3 days ago. Next is me, and then there's Kayla, and behind Kayla is Emily. Emily has been with the St. Croix Family Resource Center way back when we were under the church governance, and so she started out as an intern in 2014, graduated from Stout, and worked for a year, and wanted to start working with us, and we had that first opening. So, and behind Emily is Bob Dickey, and he's our development and communications director. And we also have a couple interns that just joined us recently. So that's staff.
Yes, perfect. And I am the youth and family advocate at St. Croix Family Resource Center. I started interning with Cindy in September of 2019, and then I was hired on in June of 2020. So very happy to be here tonight as well.
And then we can move into programs. So these are our programs. We have Family Connections, Career Connections. Those are both for families. We have the Kids After School program, and that's for children that are in our family programs, but also it can be for children, neighbors of families, and children that live across the street from where we have the after school program. And then there's Youth Connections that we'll talk a little bit much more about tonight, and supportive housing program that was for families for decades, and now we have opened it up to youth as well. And then last but not least, we are developing a host homes program for youth. So we're very excited about that. Just want to say again, you know, how we couldn't do this without community partners. So we have nonprofits and foundations, businesses, law enforcement, many of the departments at Washington County, a number of churches that just love us and take care of us, civic clubs, and then also a growing number of individuals who just really, you know, volunteer and do all kinds of things for us, and also send us funds as well. So that's how we do what we do. Let's see, and then we covered staff. So let's see. We're going to go on to the timeline of the youth program now, because that's what we're going to spend the most time talking about. So Youth Connections, it resulted from a youth homelessness study that we did back in 2017. It was a Rotary sponsored study, and what we learned from it is that there is very much a need in Washington County. Just before we started that study, there was also a survey, a national survey that was done from Chapman Hall, University of Chicago. And what they found is that whether a community is urban, suburban, or rural, the prevalence of youth homelessness is just about the same. And so, and we found that to be true too. And it's the numbers aren't good. For ages 18 to 25, it went from 9.2 to 9.6. So it's just really under 10% of youth that those ages will experience homelessness. For ages 13 to 17, it was 4.2 to 4.4%. Those numbers are just way too big for youth to be homeless. So let's see, that's the need. Impact of the drop-in centers, or no, I skipped down too far. Okay, yep, so then we opened the Stillwater Drop-in Center in 2018 in the fall. 1 year later, we opened up the Cottage Grove Drop-in Center. And then we hired our Youth Connections coordinator, Alexa, in March. And then a couple months later is when we hired Kayla. So she'll be having her 1 year anniversary soon. Both Alexa and Kayla are working on their master's degrees. So they're very ambitious, working and going to school and having a life on top of that. I don't know how they do it, but they're doing it so well. Let's see. Oh, then I wanted to mention Streetworks Collaborative. It's a collaborative of the youth serving agencies in the metro and suburban areas. And we were asked to join that. And then we were also asked to put in a proposal. And so they've been funding our Youth Connections program for the salaries of our staff that work with youth for just a little over a year now. And also with that, we've had 4 staff that have been all trained with the Streetworks training. And I'm going to let Kayla talk a little bit more about that training and what that has meant for us and what it's going to mean for the youth in Washington County.
Yeah, so the Streetworks training was a very wonderful training. It taught us a lot about how to approach youth, how to respect youth when working with them. We were trained on trauma-informed care, which is starting to become a very popular approach in, the mental health field and just services field in general. We also talked about harm reduction, sexual exploitation, and just a few other boundaries. Boundaries was a good topic. And throughout this training, it was really aimed towards how do we look at these topics and utilize these skills when working with youth. And just to add to, homelessness in Stillwater looks a lot different than it does in the cities, because you don't see the youth living out in tents on the side of the street or by the highways. A lot of it is couch hopping, staying with whoever they can stay whenever they can stay. And so homelessness is very prominent in Stillwater. It's just a little bit tougher for us to find those youth. But yeah, through Streetworks, we are just able to learn a lot of great skills in order to best advocate for those youth that we come in contact with.
Thank you, Kayla. So moving on with our timeline is just the work that we've been doing this last year. So because of COVID, we had to change how we work, but we're still doing just as much. So we still will open up our drop-in centers for youth if they needed to take a shower or wash clothing. We don't have as much of that, but we have had some of that. We're not open for walk-ins, but by appointment. We have a nice big long table so youth can come in and advocate, and youth can sit at the opposite ends of the table with masks on and work face to face that way. But there's also just a lot of phone work and dropping things off for youth, and then just like computer and phone work too, just with getting youth connected to needed services. Let's see. So then also new this year then is we got funding from a couple different churches so that we could expand our supportive housing program for youth. So we filled one of those openings for a youth, and we now have 2 more openings, and those will be for youth families. And then we just started a couple months ago developing the host home program for youth, and we're hoping that that will be up and running by June. And so what that looks like is if we start working with a youth, and of course they're homeless and they're bouncing around, what we'll first do to see if there's somebody in their circle, somebody that's healthy, supportive, that would be willing to let them be in their home for longer. And then we would help them with that relationship. We'd make sure that it was a healthy place, that they both agreed. We'd actually draw up a letter of agreement, a letter of expectations, so that everyone has talked about, like not being really loud throughout the night or not having people over and all these different kinds of things. And then what we will do is have a youth advocate work with the youth, but we'll have Emily is going to be working with any of the hosts that are hosting the youth. Because sometimes they'll want to talk about maybe something isn't going so well, but they'll want to be able to feel like they can confidentially just tell one advocate and not feel like it's going to go right back to the youth or right back to the youth or to the host. We are modeling our program after Avenues in Minneapolis. They've been doing host homes for I think about 25 years. All of the youth serving agencies have been very supportive of us. We've had several conversations with them, they're sharing a lot of their policies and procedures and forms and all that kind of stuff. So we're super excited about this. And then, so if a youth doesn't have somebody in their circle that's supportive and healthy, then we will go to just community members who we've already had 3 of our volunteers tell us that they would love to be a host home. And so then we would move to them and then make sure that it's a good match. Not all youth would be a good match for host homes, but so this will be for those that are. And so that's what we're doing. And we have no shelter for youth in Washington County. So this is something that would be doable. It's also a win-win because there's so much love exchanged, because that's what it is. It's a loving home for a period of time. It might just be for a month. It may end up being until maybe it's a senior in high school and that, they just want to graduate from high school in a stable place. We've had many youth that have come to us in their senior year, and it's so hard because they're trying to figure out where they can stay that night. And that's what's absorbing all their energy, and they just want to graduate, and it's really hard. So we're hoping that this will help when we get other youth that are in their senior. So we're expecting that most of the youth will probably be about more like 19, 20, 21. That seems to be the age of most of the youth that we work with, but we have worked with a number of 17-year-olds also, and we think the host home program would work out for them too. I guess lastly, with our timeline, I could just talk a little bit about Alexa. She's a part of a multidisciplinary team right now with Washington County, and they are working on setting protocol, writing protocol for youth that are being sexually exploited. So that's exciting too, that we're able to help with the writing of that. So that's timeline, and then let's see, I'm gonna check my time here. We're doing good before we get to questions and stuff. I'm gonna talk a little bit about, okay, we talked about the need of services because I had jumped down there. Impact of drop-in centers and youth outreach. So I think the biggest thing that happened when we opened up the drop-in centers is just the awareness to the community. So many people were absolutely shocked that there was homelessness out in Washington County, and that's because it's hidden, you know. And also there's a lot of people with a lot of pride in small towns, you know, and so people don't share what they're doing. Sometimes youth don't even tell their friends that they're homeless when they ask if they could stay over that night or hang out that night, you know. So sometimes it's the friends that kind of figure it out because the youth is going from one friend to another, you know. So it's not only is it hidden, but people don't want to talk about it. So, but we've also found that people are first shocked, but then we have such caring people out here, and people are just passionate. And the very next response is always, well, how can I help? This is terrible. What can we do? So that's the good part. So the awareness, that's the biggest thing I think that the drop-in centers have done. And then I want to talk a little bit about youth outreach, but maybe I'll let Kayla talk about the youth outreach and then also the case management. So I'm going to let Kayla talk for a little while.
Yeah, so youth outreach looks pretty similar in the different areas that we do youth outreach. For an example, we go out, we usually take 1 to 3 hours, and we'll go out to businesses in the community, and we will ask them if they mind if we leave pamphlets and brochures just with the resources, so that if someone were to come into their business, that they would be able to pass these resources along. And I think this is really important because a lot of times youth have to be in the right place in order to receive services, or they're not going to receive services most of the time just walking into a random business. So our goal is to really, like Cindy said before, educate the community on the needs for services for youth, and then try to get them on board with us to help out if they do see someone in need. A lot of our youth outreach in Stillwater looks different because if you're over in the cities, you're running into youth the entire time you're out there. So you're able to have those one-on-ones with those youth and provide them the resources and get them to where they need to be. In Stillwater, we have a few run-ins, sometimes at the parks or downtown. But a lot of our outreach is just connecting with the businesses and the community members in order to get those resources out. And then the impact of case management. I think case management is so important. I think the first important piece of that is just that they are developing a relationship with another support system that's healthy in their lives. We see a lot of times that when we're working with these youth, they don't necessarily they may have a support system, but it may not be healthy. And so just being that person for them to talk to and tell them what's going on. I think that's really important. And then we also work on goals with our case management. So we focus on, it's all individual. So it all depends on what that individual's needs are and what their goals are. But we could go anywhere from helping them get a state ID or a driver's license, all the way up to getting employment, figuring out, if they can finish their GED or finish their diploma or get their GED, to how to look for jobs, how to keep a job, how to appropriately respond when you're working. And then we also address mental health needs and substance use needs. Those are two very common things we see in the youth that we work with. And so in my eyes, I'm also a licensed social worker, but I think that if we don't address mental health or substance use needs, a lot of the times there's a lot of barriers that are then put in place to the work that we're doing with our youth. So we do a lot of referrals out just to make sure that they are receiving the necessary services that will help them move forward. So I think that's really important about case management. And then also while I'll talk about our new programming for youth. So I'm just going to mention a little bit about the Adulting 101 classes. Through this, we are offering about 10 youth at a time, and we're going to have Adulting 101 classes where we work individually with these youth who don't necessarily need our services long term, and we'll focus on life skills, which could be budgeting, how to do their taxes, just how to interact with family members, things like that. And then we are going to work on self-care, so meditation, yoga, how can they care for themselves during times like this? And then we'll focus on employment, education, and housing. So within those, there's different things. So for education, it would be how to apply for financial aid or how to apply to schools. So that's really important. And we are looking for a few volunteers to possibly host a meeting or a Zoom on a specific skill. So if there's something that our volunteers know that they're really good at, we would be willing to take them on to have them help us teach these youth these skills. So I will pass it back to Cindy.
Thank you, Kayla. Okay, let's see. I think that there was one of the things you wanted to talk about is the area that we serve. So we do serve all of Washington County, but we also kind of go a little bit beyond that. So, if we were to help a youth find housing just across the river, we would continue to work with them. If they're maybe right on the border of Washington County and St. Paul, and they wanted to continue to work with us with their goals, we would do that. But primarily it's Washington County. Let's see. We'll, of course, we've been doing more around the Stillwater area in Cottage Grove. And we've just recently in the last few months start forming a partnership with, it was Stone Soup, but it's now called Basic Needs Incorporated, and that's in St. Paul Park, and they have new office space and programming space, and we've had several Zoom meetings about how we're going to be partnering to reach more youth and individuals and families, people that are homeless in Washington County. And so I'm excited about that we're going to be able to reach more people that need services and help. Talked about service changes during the pandemic, so still working, but Zoom meetings, phone, online, sometimes, a lot of things that you need to apply for, you can apply for them online. So the advocate will sit at her computer and fill out these, different applications for clients that were overwhelmed or intimidated or needed help, and they can be on the phone. And so it's just amazing the things that you can do far apart, that we used to do, like sitting at a table, the two of us together. Let's see. And then, okay, so we talked the new programming. So we talked a little bit about both the host homes and the Adulting 101 classes. So I'm going to touch on the supportive housing program. What that is, it's a year-long program. We have a committee of volunteers that oversees the program. It's for 1 year, and it includes a subsidy, a monthly subsidy, as well as some money set aside for emergencies that come up during the year, which is often car repairs. And then also the youth, or youth or family, right now we're talking about youth, they will have a volunteer mentor that walks alongside them for that year. So they're just a healthy, a healthy community friend is really what they are. We know how successful this program is because we've been doing it for a couple decades now with families. And so we're just super excited now to be opening that up for youth. So then need for volunteers. So Zoom mentoring, helping in our donation rooms. There, as soon as we get them straightened out, or we have some volunteers that come in and get them straightened out, suddenly we get more donations. And so it really is time consuming, and we would like more volunteers to be able to help us with that. Leading a class, like Kayla said, in the Adulting 101 sessions. Public speaking, just continue to get that awareness out there. So many people just still don't even know that there's homelessness and what the gaps are and what the services are. And then doing some donation drives, which a number of churches have done and people have done, even kids have done that. So those are all just many different ways that volunteers can get involved. And I think we can turn it over for questions now.